I now reconvene the regular meeting Monday, May 11th, 2026. We'd like to acknowledge that this council meeting is being held on the homeland of the Tsanaka people. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda of the regular council meeting of Monday, May 11th, 2026? Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Bassett. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of Monday, April 27th, 2026? Move it, please, Councillor Ray. Councillor Popoff. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move right into delegations. Our first delegation tonight is, Mario Perotti of BDO Canada to present the final audit report for the year ended December 31st, 2025 for the City of Cranbrook. Welcome, Mario, and the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me here again this year. It's good to be back in council chambers with everybody. Before I start, would CFO Osborne have anything by words of opening?
Thank you, Mario. Council, our audit went very well this year. The audit team was excellent to work with. We had a lot of very good questions to ask or to answer, and the team was a pleasure to work with. So thank you for that, Mario.
Thank you, and I'll share some comments towards the end as well in terms of how our team and the feedback that we had. But we have up in front of you is the audit findings report. There's a full 31-page document in your package. And the purpose of this report is to highlight important matters and mandatory discussions that council is to have with your auditor, because it's important to remember that although my team works directly with your CFO through her team, we are accountable to council, and that is through the community charter. Those roles and responsibilities are outlined. But if it is council's pleasure to approve the financial statements, which will be presented later this evening, I'm happy to report that we will be issuing a clean audit opinion. So those financial statements do present fairly the results of the City of Cranbrook for the year ended December 31st, 2025. Okay, there we go. Okay, so as of today, our audit is substantially complete. We've completed all of our final procedures and had our final discussions that are required to happen today. And if it is council's pleasure to approve the financial statements, I will be hitting my audit sign off later this evening. And also have to report that the scope of the work performed was substantially the same as what I described to you back in March when we did our audit planning presentation. And although that seems like a fairly boring point on what's expected, when we come in the fall and winter and we do our planning, we also look at, okay, what's changed within the City of Cranbrook and how are we going to adapt our audit approach to be able to get a proper result to express an opinion. And as a part of that, we also look at what our procedures should yield in terms of results. And when everything goes to plan and the expectations are in line with what we want, we continue on. It's a good sign. When we have to start troubleshooting and adjusting our procedures, that's a sign that something's going wrong. And so we didn't have to deal with any of that this year, which is always an important sign. Now, as your auditor, when it comes to the audit findings, it's important to remember that, given the tens of thousands of transactions that flow through the city every month, we can't come in and look at every transaction. So we do a risk-based approach. Where there's areas of higher risk, we spend more time. Less risk, less time. As you can appreciate, working through the funding agreement for a major capital project from the province we should be spending more time on that than the hydro invoice to keep the lights on in this room, where there's little judgment there and it's a fairly routine transaction. So I have the big three risks, and I'll add a fourth one here in terms of our major areas. And the first one is fraud risk due to improper revenue recognition. And really what this comes down to is acknowledging that there's always going to be a risk that we would try to manipulate fraud to have a gain for the city. And that manifests itself through the government grants, in particular, looking at capital grants and, recognizing expenditures that would not be appropriate so that you don't have to return any funds to the province. We're quite pleased with the work done in this area. We didn't have any adjustments actually required in this area as well. So again, management did a great job in ensuring that that was dealt with appropriately. The next item is fraud risk related to management override of control. And again, when we look at fraud, these are two mandatory areas, the revenue recognition and management override, that every audit has to consider, not just the one for the city of Cranbrook. And the management override of control is the acknowledgement that within any organization, there's always going to be people, in particular, your leadership team, who can circumvent the control environment. And so we have to prepare procedures to be able to respond to that and ensure that we don't have detect any misstatements or misappropriation resulting from management circumventing the controls. And I'm happy to report that we did perform our testing. We also extend the testing to council as well, because obviously council can have influence over management. And based on our testing, we did not identify any areas of concern there. The next item is that there has been changes relating to the accounting standards relating to revenue recognition. It came into effect last year, but we had this as a significant risk again this year because in year 2 of adoption, that's where we start to see, okay, what was the implication? Are there any challenges? And didn't have any issues there either. The last item, even though it is not on here, that I do want to touch base with is capital projects. Obviously, capital spending is becoming more and more significant by sheer magnitude, and it's also outside of the normal course of your operational expenditures. So we do specific testing in that area, and it's not the same as what we do with your operational expenses. We focus more on the procurement process, looking at your tenders, looking at your requests for proposals, looking at your capital project budgets, adherence to the capital budgets, so that if we see, well, you know what, every project is coming in 10% over. Why is that it's always coming in like that? Is there an issue with the procurement? Is there change orders that we need to be dealing with? And again, we didn't identify any issues there. So when it came to the audit testing, quite pleased with the audit results. And I know that the team really was happy with how things went, especially when we were here in your offices. Okay. Now onto some blank pages. Okay. Hey, well, it's small text, so I'll just continue to speak while it loads. As your external auditor as well, because we come in and we're looking at your policies, we're looking at your procedures and your processes, if there are any items that we find that there are matters that we need to bring forward, especially in your internal control environment, where either your policies may not be best practices or best in class, or in particular, if we see that there's areas where we feel that you may be at risk because a procedure is not being followed or controls not being followed, we would bring that forward. And I'm happy to report that all of our testing of your controls went according to plan, and we didn't have any recommendations to bring forward to council this year. I will commit that that may not be the case every year, because I do think that every organization can improve, and we're always looking to identify areas to help you improve. Now, the last item that I'll just speak to is other required communications. As your auditor, there are certain communications that I am required to have with you. And the first is that to confirm, as your auditor, we are required to be independent in accordance with the rules of the Chartered Professional Accountants of British Columbia, and we had no matters bearing on our independence to bring forward and confirm our independence. There were no items or disclosures required in financial statements that arose from pending litigations or any significant contract areas that we needed to deal with there. So there were no additional disclosures there. When we look at, there we go. The next one, material uncertainties related to going concern. It's a really fancy way of saying that as your auditor, we have to consider whether or not the city of Cranbrook will be able to operate beyond the next year. I can safely say that you will be able to operate well beyond the next year. I still struggle with having to deal with that concept in public sector, but here we are. There were no disagreements that we had with management regarding the financial statements, and there were no items regarding non-compliance with laws or regulations that we identified. And so again, I just want to take a moment and express our sincere thank you to your finance team here. While I get to come in and do the presentation, there's a lot of work that goes in by both your team and our team, and I know that your team does work very hard in making sure that we're getting all the information that we need to express the opinion. And so again, very pleased with the results, and I open up for any questions from council regarding the audit.
Thank you very much, Mario. Council, questions, comments? Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thank you sincerely to Charlotte and her team for the great job that you do in managing our finances and keeping us out of trouble every year.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stetsky, and I will make sure to pass that on to the team that does all the really hard work. Thank you.
Further? Thanks very much, Mario. I know you're a busy guy today and you've got another appointment here right away. So thanks very much. And certainly the feedback we got from staff was, yeah, it was, the two teams worked very, very well together this year. You had a team in place on site this year, and they seem to work very well together. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for having me at the front. And now it's on to Kimberly.
Okay, our next delegation tonight includes Staff Sergeant Derek Okuno, Acting Detachment Commander, Sergeant Stu Hurt, Operations NCO, Sergeant Graham Hartle, Operations Support NCO, and we have Amanda Peters, Manager of Police Support Services and Bylaw, to present the RCMP 2026 Q1 report to Council. Welcome, guys, and the floor is yours. Guys and gals.
Thank you very much, Mayor Price. And we do appreciate you allowing us to bring our senior leadership team here. If I could, I know most of you have met them, but if I could just quickly introduce them. To my left, we have Sergeant Graham Hartle, and he oversees a number of support units in our detachment, including the General Investigation Section, and he also deals with a number of administrative tasks within the detachment. Then we have Sergeant Stu Hurt, who is our Ops NCO. So he oversees all of the general duty members, the members in our police cars that you likely see every day out there. And of course, we have Amanda Peters, our office manager, who oversees all the administrative municipal employees in our detachments and the administrative tasks. So I do feel it is beneficial for us, when possible, to have members of our senior leadership team here, because these are the members and staff that do the heavy lifting when it comes to the operations of our detachment. So what I would like to do is ask Sergeant Hartle to start us off with an update on some of the investigations that we worked on.
Thank you, Dan. So I'll go through a couple, excuse me, significant files that were resolved in Q1 of 2026. There's three primary ones. The undercover project that recently led to a 4-year jail sentence. In spring 2023, Cranbrook GIS unit carried out an undercover operation targeting the sale and distribution of illicit drugs in the community. As a result of the project, charges were approved against 4 suspects. On March 17, 2026, a Mr. Kenneth Leverington was sentenced to 4 years in jail on 6 offenses, including 4 counts of trafficking a controlled substance and 2 counts of possession of a controlled substance for the purpose of trafficking. In addition to the custodial sentence, the court imposed a lifetime firearms prohibition. This investigation and similar investigations have a lengthy disclosure process. In this case, it took approximately 1.5 years to complete the disclosure process, followed by court preparation and multiple trial dates. These investigations take numerous members from specialized units, including the undercover unit, operations unit, surveillance teams, FIS, subject matter experts, and general investigators. Generally, this takes multiple hours to complete the disclosure by our file coordinator and primary investigator. And we are hopeful that we will see further prosecution of the 3 other individuals involved in this file in the near future. There was also resolution in a 2020 homicide investigation. In January of 2026, a 43-year-old Lee Piper was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 3 years of jail time, including a mandatory lifetime prohibition for the murder of a local Cranbrook resident in September 2020. Because the homicide occurred within Cranbrook city limits, the investigation was led by the Cranbrook GIS team with support from multiple external resources. Multiple resources were utilized during this lengthy investigation, which took 2 years or almost 2 years before it was disclosed to Cranbrook Town Council, plus an additional 4 years to get through the court process before ultimately there was a guilty plea. The last file that was resolved this quarter was in relation to another drug trafficking investigation that occurred in April of 2024. The sentencing was concluded in January of 2026 and was related to a Victor Gerard, who's a 55-year-old Cranbrook resident, and he was sentenced to 7 years in federal jail time following a drug trafficking investigation that resulted in the seizure of significant quantities of controlled substances, currency, prohibited weapons, and 2 firearms. During the search in 2024, Cranbrook RCMP Enhanced Response Unit, with the assistance of Cranbrook General Duty members, seized 6 kilograms of controlled substances. Upon analysis, it was confirmed that the substances included methamphetamine, fentanyl, cocaine, ketamine, MDMA, GHB, and DMT, which had an estimated street value exceeding $522,000. Similar to the previous files, these investigations take numerous months of investigative work in addition to several months for the disclosure process and include additional outside resources, including subject matter experts and support sections. This file took, again, approximately 1.5 years to get through the court process prior to be concluded with sentencing.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. During this quarter, our detachment went live in what's called a Health IM application. It's an application that's loaded on all our frontline police officers' smartphone, and it helps guide their response when they attend to persons in crisis. It guides them to look for a number of symptoms and behaviors, provides some questions they can ask, and ultimately it helps inform their decision on how they should ultimately respond to that person and whether or not an emergency apprehension is required. It is integrated with Interior Health, which means when the police officer fills it out on scene, they hit a button that says submit, and the results print out in the emergency department here at our local hospital when we do an apprehension, giving the hospital heads up that not only that this person is coming in with us, but also gives them the list of the symptoms, behaviors that have been observed by the police officer and that interaction. And if there have been previous interactions, gives them that history so a physician can look and determine if they're operating at baseline behavior or if there is perhaps an escalation, which could help inform the final decision whether or not they require involuntary care. We've been live on it for about 10 weeks now, and it's proven to be quite efficient. We've seen a drop in wait times at the hospital. We are getting in and out faster than we were without this system. And the use of it eliminates some of the back-end paperwork that the members had to do following an apprehension, since the data is all captured there in the app in real time. Coupled with our integrated crisis response mental health substance use clinician that we use ad hoc to help attend and conduct assessments, it has made our response to mental health calls more efficient and serves those that are in crisis better at the end of the day.
All right, I just want to give you a bit of an update on our human resource picture here at our detachment. And we have 26 funded positions in our detachment, 4 unfunded positions. So I will report on those 26. At this point, we're looking pretty good. We have 2 members on parental leave. And at the time of this report, we had 1 member on long-term medical leave, but the good news is that member has transitioned to a graduated return to work, so back in the office and working in an administrative capacity at this point. We, at the time, we had no hard vacancies. We've had 1 member transfer out, so however, that was offset with the incoming constable that we had as a lateral transfer to us. So sitting at 88% right now, the unfortunate news is that we will have 1 to 2 members transferring out later in the year, but we are hard at work trying to find replacement members for them. And just to give you an idea of how the staffing works in the RCMP, we do have a full-time staffing unit. We're not able to, unfortunately, advertise these positions until we have somebody transfer out. So I wish that we know, because oftentimes we know that a member will be leaving at a certain point in time, but we just aren't able to hit that go button until that time. So what we are working on is trying to advertise our detachment within the RCMP, especially in our division, which is where we draw most of our members from. Because in my experience working in Creston and Invermere, now Cranbrook, a lot of our members don't know about our detachments out here and all that we have to offer. So Sergeant Hurt has drafted an advertisement for us and worked with your HR team here to add some photos to it, and we'll be advertising our detachment here on our internal website. We're also doing a lot of work to try to recruit new members. So eDivision, or BC, is a pilot site for our new recruiting strategy, which allows recruiting to be done out of BC, our headquarters in BC, rather than Ottawa. And they in turn have given our district some say in that. So a few things that we're doing now is they are sending out our applicant list to some of us in district, so we can actually reach out to these members now, ask them if they have any questions, invite them for coffee, learn a little bit more about them, and also to give them more insight into the career that they're interested in. They've also sent myself to take a course so that I can administer the fitness test here. So in the past, our applicants would have to travel to larger centers like Kelowna or Lower Mainland to do their physical fitness test. And now we can offer that right here. They don't have to leave. So I just recently completed one for a student at College of the Rockies. And so there's no delay in that process. So being proactive in our staffing and recruiting is very important to me, and I know it is with the team as well here. So hopefully we can keep our resource levels at a stable level here. Pass it on to you.
Thank you. Looking at community engagement, in the first quarter, the detachment conducted 62 school visits, and that was through drop-ins, engaging with students throughout the school, as well as our Books and Badges program, where our community policing constable reads safety-related books to youth in schools. They also conducted 12 school presentations at Parkland and Laurier Middle Schools on healthy relationships and consent. They conducted 6 proactive patrols in school zones, attended 5 community events, and delivered 2 crime prevention presentations to local senior groups on fraud prevention. And our community engagement coordinator conducted 4 crime prevention through environmental design, or CEPTED, assessments. We also launched the Safe Exchange Zone in January. So this area, the Safe Exchange Zone, is marked with the signage right at just off of the front entrance of the building, which is a neutral public location, so that online buyers and sellers who prefer not to meet at personal residences can can complete their online transactions at the detachment. We encourage anyone who's arranging online purchases or an exchange to meet at our safe exchange zone, because it is a very public, well-lit area with CCTV cameras. And of course, we have our members working in uniform inside should that be needed. Our community policing team also delivered fraud prevention Valentines to one of our local senior centers. And so that was Constable Hannah and Constable Dalquist, along with some of our volunteers from our community policing team. They dropped off Valentines, some handmade flowers and cards, as well as some crime prevention information.
Our frontline policing team is quite busy day in and day out. Their primary role and primary engagement and activity is call response, responding to non-emergency and emergency calls. However, it's not all call response. When they have the time, they engage in proactive policing activities and enforcement activities. The primary mandate of the frontline policing team is the maintenance of public safety and public order. And in order to achieve these goals, they find ways to make themselves visible and be out in the community, both in enforcement and to encourage civil behavior. So they engage in activities such as bar walks, curfew checks of people that have been placed on court-ordered curfews. It's the only tool of accountability in place for those. If they're not actively checking, then these offenders have free rein to leave their homes if they so desired. Next slide, please. They do proactive patrols based on intelligence and crime trends in the community. So we look at areas where we're having higher volume of offenses and make sure that our patrols and presence is directed to those areas both as a visible deterrent to the crime and in an effort to detect crime as it happens. We also engage in joint patrols with bylaws to support them in their mandates and their initiative. We conducted 16 of those this last quarter, which is a drop compared to previous quarters. We had some significant policing pressures during this previous period that directed our policing attention away from those joint patrols, but we anticipate getting back to the former level of support as we move forward. We're also looking forward to, as the weather gets nicer, launching more proactive foot patrols of the downtown core. We've heard both from city staff and citizens that there's a concern with rising disorder in the downtown core, so we're going to make a concerted effort to be present there. You can see we've got some of our statistics up on the board from the past quarter. There's a couple changes up there, things that you have not seen in the past. You can take a look at them as I explain a few things about them, and then we'll field some questions here shortly. Some of the stats I always say are not a great reflection of work completed. You know, something simple like reports to police, 2,087, that's a lot, but that doesn't really explain, 2,087 murders is different than 2,087 traffic complaints. So you can't just look at that stat and say, okay, they were busy or they weren't. But it is an indicator of the volume of calls that are coming in. We have criminal code files up there. That's not appeared in previous reports. So a criminal code file is any dispatch or incident that we report to that we are able to determine that a criminal offense was committed as part of that incident. And that, of course, is our bread and butter, is responding to the criminal events. That is the piece that we are uniquely situated and equipped to respond to. All calls for service, regardless of what they are, require work. Obviously, a homicide requires a lot of work, but even something as simple as a traffic complaint does require work. Our members jump in the car, they go out, they patrol, they try to intercede and intercept that vehicle to ensure that the roadways are safe. So there's really no call that just disappears without some form of work being put in at the front end and then the documentation of it at the back end. We've had a slight increase in calls over the previous quarter and over the same period in previous year, and that's just a continuation of the trend that we have been seeing here long term, where as the community grows, we field more calls for service and requests for response. You'll see we have some traffic stats up there as well, which is admittedly a little lower than we'd like. Traffic is not our primary mandate, but our members do try to engage in traffic enforcement, again, as they have the time and the opportunity. And this final slide of our quarterly report sort of captures the change in a number of offense categories. And really, I don't put too much personal stock in these. What I do, we often get the stats for the entire district sent to us, and I select a number of communities, and it gives us a little graph, and I overlay that with the Cranbrook graph, and they all look the same. The crime ebbs and flows at similar rates across all the comparable communities in the province. When I look at these, I look for spikes or trends. So is there something in a certain category that has jumped significantly without explanation? And then we look at the underlying, okay, is there a reason for this? And we can tackle that. One of the ones I looked at this time, residential break and enters stood out as being quite high. So I dug in, looked at it a little bit, and it wasn't a matter of, we had a lot of people breaking into homes and stealing stuff. It was a lot of things that meet the definition of break and enter, but was, an intoxicated person that walked into the wrong home, or someone with mental health issues that was wandering and walked into a home. It wasn't people entering homes with criminal intent and harming people and taking their properties.
Thank you, and that's our first quarter report. We'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And again, thank you for the great work that you do in the community, including with our citizens that are struggling with mental health issues. I've heard a lot of really good compliments about how your members are working with them. 2 quick questions. Crime prevention through environmental design. If a business would like to have their situation looked at, how would they go about doing that?
Councillor Stetsky, through the mayor. So our community engagement coordinator, Kristen, completes the CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design assessments. So if there is a business who is interested in having Kristen attend to conduct an assessment, they can certainly give the detachment or non-emergency line a phone call or drop by the detachment, and we'd be happy to schedule something.
And is there a cost for that, or is it free?
That is free, no cost.
The other one I'm interested in was the safe exchange zone. Interesting concept. So if I wanted to sell a car, I would ask the buyer to meet me in the safe exchange zone. Is that the concept?
Yes, Councillor Stetsky, through the mayor, that's correct. So any buying or selling, if you prefer not to do that at your personal residence and would like to meet at a safe, neutral, well-lit area, the detachment is certainly a great option for that. So so we do have a safe exchange zone sign right just by the to the left of the stairway up to the front of the building, and we do have cameras at that area as well. So any buying or selling can certainly be conducted in front of the detachment.
Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you. On the same thing, the safe exchange zone, how are you marketing that to the general public?
Yeah, Councillor Popoff, through the mayor, that's a great question. We have put that out on our social media site, and we likely need to continue to spread that message around because likely not everyone is aware. So we'll certainly focus our efforts on including that in some of our media releases and our social media posts.
Thank you.
Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess we should be encouraging our local drug dealers also to use that local safe zone for selling. Yes, get that on camera. At 2 o'clock last night, most of British Columbia got a wake-up call, and it was an Amber Alert from Terrace, BC. Just wondering, what's the process that goes behind triggering an Amber Alert? And is it possible to do it regionally, or is it just, regardless of what it is it province-wide?
Thank you. That's a great question, and I did a little research in preparation for that. So there's a difference between an Amber Alert in BC and a police-initiated public alert. So last night, like you said, an Amber Alert was issued approximately 1:45 a.m. and was canceled at around 3:40 a.m. So the Amber Alert program is managed through E-Division Major Crime and through the British Columbia Police Missing Persons Center. So what an Amber Alert is different from a public-initiated public alert is, or police-initiated public alert, excuse me, is that an Amber Alert is a public notification tool that is issued by police to solicit assistance from the public in locating abducted children. So it's specific for abducted children, and it's only issued in child abduction situations, not in missing children, not in all missing children situations. So as a result, there is a specific criteria that must be established, and it's managed at the provincial level. So what that means is it's managed through the divisional duty officer who, for the RCMP and the province, there's a divisional duty officer who's working 24/7 in the province. And the criteria that they must meet is that the victim is under the age of 18. Police have reasonable grounds to believe that the victim has been abducted. We have reasonable grounds to believe that the victim is in imminent danger, which we must have details that include that information. Police have obtained enough descriptive information about the victim, the abductor, and any potential vehicles involved. And finally, police believe that the alert can be issued in a time frame that will provide a reasonable expectation the child can be returned or the abductor apprehended. And how this is issued is through the Emergency Management and Climate Readiness BC Alert Readiness Program. So it is broadcast immediately through, not generally as much anymore, major television networks and radio broadcasters, but also directly via text message to any LTE linked cell phone. So for the Amber Alert program, it does go out provincially for a couple of reasons. One being the mobility of people. An Amber Alert at 1:45 in Terrace could mean that the person or the abductor has already traveled out of Terrace and into various other communities. And also because the mobility of potential witnesses. I could be a Cranbrook resident, but I could be in northern BC for work, play, whatever the reason is. And to get that to my phone is also important. The bottom line for the Amber Alert program is that now with thousands of eyes watching across provincially, it's hoping that the early warning system will coerce the kidnapper into releasing the victim or child or prevent them from doing it in the first place, because the statistics show that stranger abductions are very rare in the province of BC. At the time of the document that I reviewed was created, the Amber Alert program had only been used 22 times in BC since the adoption in 2004, and all 22 occasions the children were recovered safely and located alive. So the process does work. The difference being between police-initiated public alerts is these alerts can be initiated for specific areas, and it's what they call an intrusive alert execution. So basically, police are saying there's investigative information regarding a suspect or an active threat in an area and where they might be located, and this can be modified depending on the information. The criteria for that is there's an active criminal threat that presents an imminent risk to public in general. The threat is unpredictable and evolving and presents a major challenge for police. So the big ones are obviously the mass shooting type events. And this is not used to find a suspect. This is used to instruct the public to either shelter in place, evacuate, or to not attend a specific area. So very, very different from the Amber Alert program. And that's why it can be limited to a location. But the goal of the Amber Alert is that broad communication to everyone, although for us in Cranbrook, looking at it at 2 a.m. As a terrace one, it just woke us all up, but it did work, and the abductor returned the children within a couple hours of the Amber Alert being issued.
Okay, I appreciate your answer. And yeah, I'm glad that we have this effective tool. Thank you.
Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. I just have 2 questions. One, are we going to lose any members to FIFA? I know there was a letter that we might. Do we know if we're losing anybody to that or how that looks?
Yes, we will be. To this point, there's going to be 14 deployments to FIFA over the course of the event. Now, we're not going to have to send members for every deployment. So far, we've received the asks for the first 3 deployments. And as a region, we were required to send 3 members for the second deployment, which is in June, 1 week in June. Of those 3 members, Elk Valley Detachment will be sending 1, Kimberley will be sending 1, and Columbia Valley will be sending 1. We will be sending 1 in the capacity of TAC troop. So I feel so far we've gotten off lucky, but there's still several more deployments to go. So we'll definitely be sending some members, and it will not be more than 10% of our establishment.
And then my second question is, you've done a really good job on Facebook around e-bikes, e-motorbikes, e-scooters. It feels like it's an ever evolving game though, like with how many watts these bikes are, whether like what constitutes as pedals. How do we keep up on that, or what are things that we can do to, maybe even from the city side to help educate, through our communications on use on sidewalks and stuff? It seems like these things are really advancing more so than the laws or the rules around them.
Yeah, that's a very accurate statement. The technology is always moving faster than the legislation can keep up. Enforcement can be tricky. The legislation has certain limits on speeds, on wattage, and it can be difficult roadside. We're not experts in these things. If you pull someone over and you say, what's the max speed of this thing? Without taking it for a test drive, you're not going to know. So realistically, we look at some of the large elements, like if it's an electric assisted bicycle, it must have functional pedals. That's a clear one. It can't be pedals that are mounted well behind you can actually use. You must be able to move that thing via pedal power. And then they need to follow all the rules that cyclists follow when on the roadways.
Back to Councillor Stetsky.
Thank you. Just a subsequent question. So there's a bicycle program that go into the schools here in Cranbrook. And one of the things I heard the other day was that, I don't know if it's a Cranbrook bylaw or a provincial one, but that if you're 12 years old or younger, you can legally ride on sidewalks. Is that true? I never heard that before.
I only know this because my daughter just did it last week. According to the WeBike program, if you are 12 or younger, you have the ability to ride on the sidewalk just due to your age, your size, and obviously depending on certain younger children, their ability to ride a bicycle just for safety. But through the program, they do teach them all of the basic rules of the road and the fact that they are considered a vehicle as opposed to a pedestrian in those situations.
Any further, council? I've got a question. I don't know if you can answer it or not, but the break and enters in the residential and commercials increased a little bit. Do you have any kind of percentages or numbers? How many of those are being caused by local individuals, and how many are, say, part of something more organized outside of the city?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great question. Of the ones that I looked at, I didn't see any that were committed by people coming from out of the community. It was all individuals that had local ties to the community that were responsible for the break and enters.
Thank you. Further, council? Thanks very much, guys. Great presentation. Please pass along our appreciation and thanks to your members for everything they do day to day here. Yeah, I certainly see the community policing model is really expanding in a good way in Cranbrook. So thanks so much. Well, moving into bylaws. The first bylaw for consideration is from Finance regarding Cranbrook 2026 tax rates bylaw number 4244. 2026. This bylaw is back tonight for adoption. Can I get a motion that council adopt Cranbrook tax rates bylaw number 4244 2026? Mover, please, Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Bissett. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. The next bylaw for consideration is from Engineering Development Services regarding development cost charge bylaw number 4245 2026. This bylaw is back before council tonight to rescind third reading, make an amendment, and give third reading again. Can I please have staff give us a brief explanation of this?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So at the last council meeting, council gave 3 readings to the bylaw. Pardon me. Pardon me. And then as Urban Systems was helping put the package together to send to the inspector municipalities, they came across an error that they had
put into their spreadsheet for the calculations of the projects. Unfortunately, it was for one of the lift station out of the spray irrigation to transfer between ponds 1 and 2 in the future, but the magnitude of the error was the project's supposed to be just over $2 million. They inputted it as $200,000. So it was substantial enough. Well, we have to make sure it's accurate anyways for the inspector to meet accounting principles and when they're looking at the background reports. So we're coming back to council now to rescind third reading, amend the cost in the schedule because it's increasing the costs roughly by $200 for a fee simple lot, which is less for an apartment and whatnot. But yeah, so we're bringing that back to correct the bylaws and resubmission to the inspector.
Thanks very much, Curtis. Can I get a motion that council rescind third reading to the development cost charge bylaw number 4245 2026 and further that development cost charge bylaw number 4245 2026 be amended by replacing Schedule A as attached to the development cost charge bylaw number 4245 2026, staff report dated May 11th 2026, and further that council give third reading as amended to the development cost charge bylaw number 4245 2026 and direct staff to resubmit development cost charge bylaw number 4245 2026 to the inspector of municipalities for approval. Move up, please, Councillor Ray. Councillor Popoff. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks. Thanks, Curtis. Moving into new business, first item of new business is from finance regarding the consolidated financial statements for the year ending December 31, 2025. Charlotte's on hand to give us an overview of the report.
Thank you, Mayor Price. I'm going to try to put the financial statements up on the board. So what I plan to do tonight is just to go through the two top financial statements, the statement of financial position, consolidated statement of financial position, and the statement of operations. And it will be, the plan is a very high level review. And at the end, it is hoped that council will accept and approve the consolidated financial statements, in which case then the BDO team can sign off the audit report. So the first statement is the consolidated statement of financial position. The key number here is really the net financial assets number, which is the financial assets less the liabilities. Our financial assets have grown by about 29%. And really, the majority of the changes on this statement have to do with the fact that we are so involved with some very large projects. So we have grant dollars that in some cases have been deferred because we haven't used them yet. So you'll see deferred revenue has gone up $10 million. That is basically federal and provincial grant dollars that have been set aside because we haven't spent them yet. And then once we spend them, they'll get pulled into revenue. Similarly, that also explains why the cash position is higher, is that we have additional cash on hand, as well as some slight, very slight buildup on the reserve side. We are essentially using the reserves as quickly as we're getting the money into the reserves, but we are earning some interest. So that discussion for another day. The other item I just wanted to point council's attention to is the land held for resale, $327,000 in 2025. That is the Tudor House Knights Hall. We acquired that through the tax sale process, and it represents the outstanding taxes, the cost of the some of the cleanup, as well as some receivables that had been accrued on the property prior to it actually becoming ours in September of 2025. Just touching on a little bit of detail. So the temporary investments are up. That is really just a matter of timing. At the end of last year, they were waiting to be invested, and then so they were part of the cash position. Accounts receivable are up 47%. That again is grants that we are waiting to receive. Liabilities are up 22%. So that's big projects straddling the end of the year. We've got invoices out there that were outstanding at the end of the year, and the majority of the large ones relate to these large projects. And we've talked about the deferred revenue up 161%. That is basically provincial and federal grants. So just to touch on the financial assets one final time, the fact that it is a net financial asset as opposed to a liability suggests, as Mario was alluding to, that we have enough financial assets to cover our liabilities. It also reflects the significant investments made on large-scale infrastructure projects funded from reserves and grants. This is the cash set aside, and it will be further. It will continue to evolve because in that number is not the debt. Some of the debt that we have planned for the larger projects that we are working on, for example, Gold Creek Dam, $9 million, and UV disinfection, $2.4 million. Those are not actually picked up in that number. So it is a bit of a moving number, especially right now when we are so involved in the development of these larger projects. The number will also continue to grow as we continue to add assets, because it is, well, the number at the bottom, the accumulated surplus, pardon me, includes our capital assets as well. So there is nothing really, no big changes to note on the statement of financial position for 2025 over 2024. So the next statement I'll review with council is the statement of consolidated statement of operations. This is revenues and expenditures. So our grants are, and a lot of my review will focus on the difference between the budget and the actual. So the federal and the provincial grants, we see this, it's very normal for us to see that the budget was higher than what we actually saw, and it all has to do with the timing of projects, as well as the revenue recognition, the new rules on revenue recognition, causing us to have to defer revenue recognition until we actually have earned the revenue by virtue of expending on the project. So sale of services and fees, about 2.3 million over budget, primarily as a result of building permit fees higher than budget. RCMP support services recovery, that is, those are the 3 invoices we've sent to E-Division for recovery of municipal staff support of regular members. That is an item we're having discussions with the RCMP on to see where we land on that. Western Financial Place revenue, $230,000 over budget. Other arena revenue, about $100,000 over budget. And the airport, about $235,000 over budget. The contributions from developers, $902,000 actual on a budget of $3.7 million, is essentially transfers from DCCs. We don't budget for those, or pardon me, we do budget for those, but if the project is not, again, if it's in progress, until that entire project is complete. The entire DCCs will not be moved over, but the budget would have considered the project to be a one-year project. Contributed assets, so those are completed developments that we take possession of once the development has passed engineering's review, and we end up owning those assets. So that's what those are. Interest earned on investments, as always, we budget those very conservatively, and that has been our standard practice. Other revenue is significantly higher than budgeted. Included in there are the actuarial adjustments on debt, which we don't budget for, interest earned on MFA debt, and MFA debt reserve fund, and Western Financial Place naming rights, and many other sort of ancillary items. On the expenses side, we, for the total expenses were less than budget, and there's a lot of movement within those lines. If council will remember, when we talked about when we looked at the budget and we were shifting wages and benefits out of the utilities into the general fund, you will see that the reason for that is reflected in these financial statements, because there was the actuals were significantly less than budgeted in the utility funds. So that is where that discussion we had at budget time, that's where that shows up. In addition, special projects and major repairs are also included in the budget. And if we don't end up using the major repairs allocation, for example, on the water side or the sanitary sewer side, those can be fairly large major repair budgets that if they're not required to be used, then they don't get used and the funds go back into the reserves. So the annual surplus of $14,735,000. This is a conversation I think we have every year. It doesn't mean, because we don't budget for a surplus, but included in that number is, of course, the taxes we've collected. But when we collect taxes, we also are transferring some of those taxes into reserves. And the transfer into a reserve is not considered an expense. So we collect the money in taxes, but we have no offsetting expense, which is why that $14 million, why the surplus always looks like that. The rest of the statements, I won't go through those, and I had not planned to go through the notes. The notes are probably more informative, quite frankly, than the statements for the layperson to read. So I encourage you to take a look at the notes. And now if council has any questions, I would be happy to answer those.
Council? Nothing from council? So obviously you did an excellent job. No questions. Thank you very much, Charlotte. I did notice interesting. It's not overly significant, but it's worth mentioning that certainly if I look at federal and provincial grants, last year we did better than we have been doing for the last number of years. Certainly what we submitted, and what we actually received was definitely up over previous years. So, that's on staff. So thank you very much for that, guys. They've made a big difference. Looking at probably $6 million. So that's saving the taxpayer $6 million. And so great. Seal Pitcher.
Thank you for that comment, Mayor Price. But I just want to say it's not just on staff, it's the relationship that this council's built with federal and provincial governments that's also a big factor in the grant money coming to Cranbrook.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah. Great, guys. Can I get a motion that council accept and approve the consolidated financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2025? Councillor Blissett, Councillor Stetsky. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks again, Charlotte. Great work. Okay, we're moving now into administrative updates. The first update is from Recreation and Culture regarding the Participation Community Challenge. We have staff here to speak. No, we have Mark here to speak to this.
Thanks, Mayor Price. This one's fairly straightforward. We got a media release ready to go out tonight. So just in regards to the participation program is back in force. And so we'll be broadly advertising, starting with a media release that'll go out as soon as we're done this item at council.
Fantastic. Yeah, great initiative. Next up is from Fire and Emergency Services regarding the 2026 Q1 report to council. And we have Chief Driver on hand to give us an overview.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Appreciate the opportunity to share the update on Cranbrook Fire and Emergency Services first quarter. That's January through to the end of March. So over the first quarter in 2026, we responded to 589 calls for service, essentially the same number as the last quarter and follows the winter pattern that we typically see. Of those calls, 27% were fire and rescue related and 73% for pre-hospital care. This is in alignment across the province with what's seen in today's modern fire service. A lot of calls and a lot of variety of calls. So we need to be ready for whatever the public does require at the time. As a fire department, we're watching where the calls are happening. We're continuing to see a steady concentration in the downtown core, both in call volume and call types. There's a broad variety of calls happening in our downtown core as of late, and so is the call volume picking up. Because we're seeing this is consistently happening over time, quarter after quarter, the transition has been happening. We're treating this as a shift in risk, and we're working with our partner agencies, as you heard from the RCMP this morning, to better understand what's driving this change and to reduce the impacts on our citizens, our businesses, and our service delivery model. On the fire and rescue side of things, of our call volume, we had 161 incidents in the first quarter. 4 of them were structure fires, 53 outdoor fires, 65 fire alarm activations, and 39 related to rescue. On the pre-hospital care side, we attended 428 incidents. The most common call type in this quarter was clearly overdoses and poisonings at 119 calls. The next came in at breathing, chest pains, sick persons, falls and back injuries, and seizures. Many of these calls are extremely time sensitive, and the early assessment and stabilization that our staff makes does contribute to patient outcomes. As expected, most of the call types declined throughout the winter months. We had a traditionally mild winter from January through to the end of March, and our call volumes did go down, but we did see a very notable increase in overdose calls where it doubled in that quarter over the quarter before that. And that is directly related to the toxic drug crisis as it entered the southeast region of the province over the winter. And so we noticed that locally, and certainly the staff and the community experienced that throughout the winter. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Scott. Councillor Graham.
Thank you. How are we doing, or how are you doing with staffing? Like, are you full complement? Do you have people off, or are things pretty smooth right now?
I hesitate to say that I have all my staffing at present. All healthy and working currently.
Well, that's good news. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So year over year, where are things with overdoses in general? Better, worse, pretty much the same?
Yeah, so they're very dependent on the current drug supply and its toxicity levels. So it changes on a daily basis depending on the supply that's in town locally. It's the overdose volume that we have is directly related to the composition of the drug supply that's in our local system.
But in general, is that above past years, below past years, pretty much on?
So last quarter was double from the quarter before it, and the quarter before it was pretty standard over the last couple of years.
Okay. And how are we doing with fireproofing the city of Cranbrook this year?
So with respect to wildfire mitigation, the province changed its system due to some challenges across the entirety of the province. The wildfire risk reduction work that we have been doing here for more than a decade is catching on across the province. And some of the financial challenges of delivering that in coastal fire centers is the costs are exceptionally different than what we were experiencing here. And so the province put a hold this year on prescribed fire funding but not the Fire Smart homeowner and business owner funding that's out there. So we locally are continuing with an application for Fire Smart funding to increase the homeowner and business side of our wildfire risk reduction model, but there is no provincial funding under the UBCM delivery system that does prescribed fire. We did, and I think we did some media on it earlier, we did apply for a grant through Columbia Basin Trust to get some prescribed fire on the ground, and we do have funding for 2 fires, one up near the reservoir and one over by the airport this year. So those should be taking place in the fall and possibly the spring if the window permits. But the regular provincial funding has been paused for now, and we've heard that it's going to come back in a different form, hopefully sooner than later.
Council, anything further? No? Thanks very much, Scott.
You're welcome. Thank you, Council.
That's great news that you got 100% staffing. That's really good news. Next admin update is from, oh, hang on, lost that one. I had it and lost it. Let's try this. Is from Engineering and Development Services regarding Victoria Avenue South and 2nd Street South intersection. We have Mike and Curtis here to give us an overview of the update.
Pardon me again. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Given the question that came up at the last council meeting about the westbound through and right turn lane at the intersection of Victoria and 2nd Street South, staff have received a number of comments and complaints in the past about this intersection, so we have studied this recently. So bringing the report to council for information. Kind of the big items that come out of it is that, pardon me, the level of service, the intersection is an acceptable level of service at a C. D or E lower are actually unacceptable, so it's well within acceptable limits. That movement is the critical movement that's being identified. The queue length that was found was a delay about 25, 26 seconds. So actually putting a second lane or changing the laning really doesn't impact a whole lot. While it might decrease the queuing length, it might save a couple seconds or several seconds. So it's not a lot really. I think the bigger note that came out of the report is that the right turn movement is not the safest. The site distance required is 95 meters. The site distance provided is 50 meters. So the actual recommendation in the report was to limit right turns on reds so that to ensure that traffic is moving safer. And that's probably reflected in the crash statistics that are there. And there was a lot of side impacts. At this time, we haven't moved forward with that installation or moving forward with that. But yeah, that was really the important movement. It is the critical movement, but it's at this point, given that it's an acceptable level, staff weren't moving forward with any major changes to the intersection.
Councilor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor Price. Thank you very much for the report. I think it's a reminder for me, for sure, of all the work that's always going on behind the scenes in terms of the requirements for safe roadways and all of the empirical data that goes into assessing the safety of our roads. So it was great to have this report handy. My backyard backs on to Victoria Ave South in this area. And so anecdotally, I can tell you by listening and watching cars go by, there's definitely a lot of accelerating that happens between 2nd Street North and 2nd Street South. And then the same likely continues onward south past 2nd Street South. So for me, I think a key takeaway was just like probably the lowest cost recommendation from the report would just be to assess the speed that's in that area. And I would suggest, yeah, definitely between 2nd Street North, 2nd Street South, and then past, as the report noted, further south past 2nd Street South. I'm going to date myself here, but when Muriel Baxter was still a school, there was a time when there was an actual human being who was a crossing guard when kids were crossing Victoria to get across to Muriel Baxter, which of course slowed the speed during those school crossing times. That was quite a number of years ago. So yeah, I think it would be really helpful to have that information. It's very tempting for folks as well, right? As you come down from Kootenai Orchards down that hill to go faster than 50. You might slow down when you go by the pickleball, but you hit the curvy section. So there definitely is a temptation to be going faster than 50 kilometers an hour. So I would be interested in, yeah, us looking at collecting that speed data and then, yeah, integrating that into our thinking, just because that's like the lowest level of intervention and really would be, I think, quite cost effective as well. And then the other thing that stuck out for me was, again, there's a reference to active transportation. And I asked the question to our management team today, and they confirmed that we did approve our active transportation plan on May 6th, 2024. And so just I could certainly use with a refresher of kind of, because that includes community consultation and all those kinds of things. And I think it's important to keep that top of mind as well when we're looking at these kinds of things.
Thank you for that. Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Curtis, on page 7 of the urban systems, it shows approximately 4 collisions in that intersection over that 5-year period. 4 collisions per year over the 5-year period. Were those specifically related to a vehicle on 2nd turning right onto Victoria, or they're just general collisions in that intersection? It doesn't reference the what.
Pardon me. Yeah, Councillor Popoff through the mayor. Those are all of the ICBC reported collisions in the intersection in general. It does lay out the type of collisions below, but it doesn't say what exact movement they were. There was 7 side impacts.
Right. So we have no idea if those were directly due to the right-hand turn onto Victoria. It could just be anywhere within the intersection. So I'm just, again, I think it's the point that, and I understand the principles of why, you're saying it's kind of a tough intersection because of the configuration, but people, especially at the rush hour times, they will not go down to that intersection. They'll turn off and go down wherever the road is past the regional district and then the hospital, and then make that left-hand weird turn and end up down on the other 2nd Street. So you're just redirecting traffic. So, I mean, I understand why, but I mean, if we don't have current hard evidence that it's on that right turn piece of the intersection causing those 4 collisions a year, I'm still thinking it might be something we want to look at.
Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Just so happens we have our fire chief sitting there who, I'm assuming our fire department uses that intersection quite frequently. Has it caused any issues for our emergency services at all?
So I'm not familiar with the report, but I can speak anecdotally about our experience since we've moved into the fire hall. And yes, we do struggle with the sight lines at the intersection when we're trying to make entry with emergency lights and sirens. So we're working with our public works team and the engineering team to deal with it through some of the light control issues that we can obtain.
So that might be another reason, as Councillor Ray was suggesting, of looking at the speed that people are traveling through that intersection.
I can say we haven't had any incidents, but we have had a number of close calls.
Yeah, thank you.
Curtis, you have a comment?
Just going to add to Scott's comment there. I have signed off on Public Works. Currently, right now, there's for the fire safety department, there's a 10-second delay on the preemption for the fire trucks. That was due to back in the day when they first installed the fire hall. They pressed a button when they left, took 10 seconds to get there. Now it's incorporated in the trucks, and we're trying to incorporate it in all of the intersections. So we're actually making that so it's a 0-second delay, so that the light will turn red and green for the fire trucks sooner. So that is a change we are making here, if it hasn't already been made in the last week or two.
All good news. Anything further, Council? Okay, thanks very much, guys. Moving on to correspondence, we have 3 items of correspondence. Would council like to receive for information, discuss, or make a potential motion? We have correspondence from Jim Capidio at Mountain Meadows Strata Corp. Councilor Bissett.
Thank you. I was just wondering if our staff could forward this on to the RCMP, because it does deal with RCMP issues and information they should have on that area.
Good point. Councilor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if this area is well lit or not, and that could be something to discuss with the Strata board as well. But usually, people don't like to congregate and do these kind of activities in well lit areas.
Okay. Councilor Stetsky.
So the third point in the letter was consider installation of appropriate barriers to prevent misuse of the space beneath the bridge. Do we have any experience in Cranbrook with erecting barriers under bridges? Not that I'm aware of.
Councillor Stetsky, through the mayor, I think this would be an opportunity, for a combined look at it with some operational staff and bylaw. Like this does fall a bit under the lens of the SEPTED discussion about making certain unsafe locations not easy to congregate in, especially if there's people digging or doing something underneath the footing of a walking bridge. That's probably not good. I know we do have experience, putting fencing and gates and stuff around areas that should be minimized for access, around dams and spillways and other infrastructure locations. So I think there's probably a practical way to look at something that may be simple and effective there.
Great. Councillor Brissette, then Councillor Popoff.
I just think this is a good opportunity for the RCMP to work with city staff and the condominium board on a SEPTED design, just what we were talking about tonight, then decide how to proceed if there are things. So I do think it's critical that the RCMP is involved and then move forward from there.
Thank you. Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you. And I do agree with Council Bissett. Just for reference, this is a culvert underneath either the road or the rotary way, and it's a concealed private, not visible to the street or the public area. So an ideal place to congregate. So if we can just get rid of some of the foliage or whatever in there and make it more publicly visible, maybe that might alone just attract people from partying down there.
Cool. And then I have a letter from the Chamber of Commerce regarding the Citizen of the Year. And let me just have a look at the sponsorship levels. They're asking us if we'd consider sponsorship. Exclusive sponsorship is $2,000. Exclusive gold is $1,500, and exclusive silver is $1,000. So I prepared a motion for this. Can I get a motion that council receive the correspondence from Stacy Brensrud, Executive Director, Cranbrook Chamber of Commerce, received April 27th, 2026, regarding the Citizen of the Year sponsorship request, and further that council approve to support as a, do we have somebody want to make a recommendation for level of sponsor, gold, exclusive? I'll say exclusive. Okay. In the amount of $2,000. Source of funds, council contingency, and further that staff notify the Cranbrook Chamber of Commerce to apply for support through the municipal grant program in future years. Can I get a mover? Councillor Bissett. Councillor Popoff, discussion. Councillor Peabody.
Just a question for staff. In our contingency fund policy, are we allowed to donate more than $500? I thought we had a $500 limit in our policy.
Yeah.
So the mayor, through the Councillor Peabody, that is what the policy says. However, it is council's policy, so a council resolution would override that. It's a guideline.
Okay, no, I'll leave it there.
Okay. Councillor Graham, then Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you. I just, with some of these that come forward, I feel they're different things than what council contingency is about. You know, like traditionally, or for the, I know we do a few things, but this feels more like an advertising decision versus a council contingency fund. And curious why we don't have an advertising budget that our economic development officer would be like. To me, this would fall under that more than council contingency or through communications, like where it was kind of like when we had that discussion a few years back about the rodeo and what buckle sponsorship we wanted. It's like, well, that really should be an advertising decision, not necessarily a council decision, more than like the Triton Swim Club needs to go to Vancouver for a swim meet. That's more council contingency, in my opinion. So do we not have a budget for advertising, or this could not fall under economic development?
Councillor Graham, to the mayor, you are correct. We do have an advertising budget. Traditionally, that has been done, used for advertising and marketing, you know, the city and, you know, specifically trying to generate economic development and attraction for growth and investment. Something like this is more, maybe it's more in between. Although there is advertising value in putting logos up, you know, the logos are going to be for the citizens of the community that are attending this event. So it may not necessarily have that same impact or positive economic development benefit, as we're not going to be seeing that target audience from an advertising perspective. So I could see it definitely looking at it both ways. This is something from a department's perspective, we've seen a lot of these economic development requests go through economic development. And a lot of them have been straddling that gray area between, is this something that should go to council because we're sponsoring a fundraiser or an event? Or is this something that is truly has direct, tangible economic benefit or advertising benefits for something that's in the economic development lens? So we'd be maybe seeking some policy advice from council, maybe something that we need to work on a little bit more under the same guise of all of these similar requests that we're working on policy for.
CEO Virtual may have an initial comment here.
Yeah, so before we get too far on this one, it's like in anything with budgeting. So currently, you know, if there's advertising dollars assigned to a staff member under their portfolio, those are dollars based on previous year's expenses and planned expenses for the year ahead. And so what these are is items that are landing on council's desk and then looking for a source of funding. So if we were going to have a source of funding for sponsorships, that's something we'd need to set up and set aside so staff haven't committed that money, or, you know, basically a $5,000 fund for sponsorships that come in through the year or something like that, rather than it would be a surprise to a staff member that has a committed communications budget, for example, to all of a sudden have to find $1,000 out of. So it's just how we budget. So that's why it's landing in the council contingency.
Councillor Green?
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mayor.
Oh, sorry, Councillor
just gonna
Graham,
supplemental.
follow-up question.
Yeah, and like I understand. It's just I feel like there's got to be some wiggle room in that. It's no different than council contingency, right? Like there's around advertising and what we do, and why do we want to do this? I'm not opposed to it. I'm just looking at ways that we have a policy that is $500. We have a policy that kind of works with you know, one-offs. This is not a one-off. The Citizen of the Year happens every year. If this is something we want to get involved in, maybe it needs to be kicked over to an advertising thing where, yeah, Citizen of the Year, we sponsor X amount every year through let staff work with that. I don't know. It's just, why do we want to be the exclusive title sponsor? I'm just, it's a question. I'm not opposed to it. What does it do for us?
Yeah, I kind of look at this as a one-off because there's a solution there that in future years they have to apply. So we're going to make that recommendation that they apply through the municipal grant program. So hopefully this is just a one-off out of the council contingency until we can get them aligned with the other program. I got Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Ray, Councillor Peabody.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm not opposed to this, but there's not a lot of information here. Like, what's the $2,000 for? I don't see that anywhere in the letter. What did they do in the past for sponsorship? that makes this different this year in terms of the ask. So I'd kind of like to see more information before we do a final vote on it. Just ask for $2,000.
I assumed it was for the Citizen of the Year award.
Like to pay for a $2,000 award?
Yep. Councillor Peabody? I'm sorry, Councillor Ray? Councillor Peabody?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm comfortable enough with supporting the motion as it is, partly because of the reference to future years to redirect the nonprofit grant program. However, I would agree with Councillor Graham that I do think, and as Mike Matika referred to as well, I think we have an opportunity to look at some future policy procedure development and to actually include this in our future budgeting process. I think it would be helpful for us, not right now, but as future policy and procedure work, I think there is a distinction to be made for event sponsorships versus what really the nonprofit grant program is about. So sponsorships are meant to have a marketing value. And I would say for many sponsorships, we're actually marketing to our internal customers, and our residents are our internal customers. And it's about supporting good initiatives like this in the community, building goodwill, those kinds of things. But I would say sponsorship is more on the marketing side of things. It's not a nonprofit activity that's benefiting in the community some way. It's a marketing sponsorship. So I would really like to see, a modest sponsorship budget line that perhaps someone like our economic development officer could manage with some guidelines. But yeah, I don't know that these types of sponsorship requests really, I think they could be handled by someone in management with a budget line and with some guidelines. So yeah, for the future, I hope we could move in that direction.
Thank you. Councillor Peabody?
Thank you, Mayor. I share the same sentiments as Councillor Graham and Councillor Ray, and it's something that we've discussed at the council table before, is having our economic development officer talk about the sponsorship opportunities. One thing I'm worried about here is that we might be setting a precedent that anyone hosting an event in Cranbrook now can come to the city of Cranbrook and get $2,000. Because how do we say yes to sponsoring this event? And the chamber, this is something that they're trying to profit from. It's not just something they're trying to cover their costs. This will be an item on their books that they're going to try and use as a revenue generator. So to give the chamber $2,000 and then not give the next item in the agenda, which is the Friends of Children 2026 gala request, not give them $2,000. What is our reasoning for doing one over the other? I would be comfortable giving the chamber $500 and making that our cap. That's just where my thought is. And it's not that I don't feel like this event isn't worth $2,000. I just don't want to set the precedent of us picking one over another. And $2,000 is more than we give some of the community groups that apply for grants from the city. No, I think the Symphony of the Kootenays got $2,000 from us. And that was a big discussion point as well.
Okay. Anything further? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? The motion's defeated. Councillor Peabody?
I would like to make a motion that we donate $500 to the Citizen of the Year event, with that money coming from the council contingency.
Can I get a second to Councillor Ray? Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Good discussion. And then we go into the last piece of correspondence from Jessica Arena, member of Board of Directors, Friends of Children, regarding Friends of Children's 2026 Gala. There's a request here. Would somebody like to make a motion on that? Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a motion that never mind.
Sorry, Councillor Peabody, before you start with Mayor Price, Catherine did send an email to the organizing committee, and they are fully subscribed for sponsorships. So that was the update. And so what they'd be looking for is just any other kinds of contributions. So if I could request, if there is any motion tonight, it just be to simply refer to staff and or Culture and Rec could look after some swim passes or something that would be smaller.
Okay, thank you, CEO, for Joe. I was going to make a motion that we donate a certain amount of pool passes and fund that through council contingency, but is there another revenue?
Yeah, under administration, we have the ability to donate a little bit like that. Like it's going to be such a small, just a referral to staff is all that's needed for this one.
Okay, then great. Then I am happy to refer this to staff.
You good? Okay. Alrighty. That now brings us to mayors and councillors' reports and inquiries. We'll start with Councillor Graham.
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report. Councillor Papa.
Nothing to report.
Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. On Wednesday, May 6th, I was pleased to attend Project Heavy Duty along with Mayor Price and Councillor Stetsky. And what a great project that is. Collaboration among SD5, the college, and then so many community partners around using heavy equipment and trades in the community. And they noted that with all the in-kind donations of staff time and equipment and everything else that's involved, that project has more than $200,000 in value. So it's pretty awesome for those students who are interested in going into the trades, and we definitely need people to go into the trades. So thank you and congratulations to everyone involved in that. On Friday, I was happy and sad. I was happy to attend the final Blacks game of the playoff run, and congratulations to the team for all their hard work. And it was a great playoff run, and we're looking forward to next year. And this weekend was busy. Saturday, I popped into the East Kootenay Heritage Fair. It was really awesome to see a whole bunch of students and families in the Alexandra Hall at the Cranbrook History Center bright and early on a Saturday morning with some, all the projects were really awesome. So that was great to see all those students there. And then of course it was the 40th anniversary of the Children's Festival. So thank you and congratulations to all the organizers and volunteers who created yet another amazing children's festival. And last but not least, yesterday, the run for SpongeBob the Musical ended at Key City Theatre. So amazing talent in our community and all the dedication and hard work from all those teachers, adults, and the students.
Thank you. Councillor Bissett.
Well, thank you. So one of the things I thought I would mention is we had regional district last week, and we brought forth a motion to have the regional district staff look at opening the reuse center at the Cranbrook transfer station. And we had good support for that, and I'm really hoping that that can happen in the near future. So that's, keep your fingers crossed that that can happen again. Also, we have a traffic safety committee, but from what I understand, it hasn't met in a long time. And there's been some concerns from the public come up about sort of a bike route across from Rotary Way across 4th Street and how to accommodate that, particularly at 11th Avenue and 7th Avenue. So if the traffic committee and traffic and safety, whatever it's called, could get together and have a look at that. It is a little time sensitive since we're in biking season now. But at least if we could have a look at that, that would be appreciated. And then also, a couple of people have spoken to me about their concerns about tree removal in their area and how that has caused a significant change in the aesthetics of their area. Plus, it also affects energy conservation and things like that. And I was wondering if we had a tree bylaw. And if we do, if we have any limitations on what can happen on private land with mature trees. And maybe if staff could report back on that and we could look at whether that is something we want to pursue.
Mike, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, Councilor Brissette through the mayor, I think it's best for us to provide an admin update on that because it is broad. We do have some bylaws and policies, but it mostly speaks to city-owned land and city-owned trees. But it is, I think there would be some good discussion for us to bring forward.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. Councilor Peabody.
Nothing to report.
Councilor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you. Three things, and the third one will take a little bit of time. First of all, congratulations to the Bucks on a great postseason. It was very exciting hockey. Considering where they were before Christmas to where they ended up, it was a spectacular finish to the season. So very much offer my congratulations. Second thing, a couple of constituents, it's actually a husband and wife, and they both took credit for coming up with the idea. There's concern about people speeding through red lights, particularly on Victoria Avenue. And the suggestion, and I support this, having sat at that intersection at Kootenay Street and Victoria Avenue several times when vehicles blew right through the red light, that we consider actually installing red light cameras on the traffic lights on Victoria Avenue as a priority. And so my question for the CAO is, so what's the process you have to go through to potentially get cameras on those intersections? Not for speed, simply for red lights.
So thank you, Councillor Stetsky, through the mayor. It actually had Stu was prepared, or I should say, Darren Kakuno, he was prepared for that. He had researched that item, so unfortunately he's not here, so I'll have to bring that one back. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. It is a serious concern, but I'm curious as to what the process would be. Third thing I have is over kind of a long-standing but really important issue about getting a youth detox and treatment center brought to Cranbrook. Just a quick background. Back in May of 2024, 13-year-old Caitlin died of an overdose. The next year, another young fellow, I think he was about 12 or 13, died of an overdose. And so when we started looking into what is the support for youth, particularly in Southeast British Columbia, around detox and treatment centers, and it turns out, of course, there is day-to-day kind of support provided by Interior Health. They do their best, but there is no center established in this part of British Columbia. And so we took a resolution forward to AKBLG in 2025, which was passed unanimously, the only unanimously passed resolution. Nothing happened, and so we took it to AKBLG again this year. And I'm just going to, for the benefit of those that aren't familiar, I'm just going to read through the resolution and then have a few comments after it. So the resolution, whereas there is an urgent need for publicly funded beds to support youth 0 to 18 years of age struggling with drug and alcohol addiction in southeastern British Columbia, and whereas the closest treatment centers serving youth are located in Kamloops for detox and recovery, an 8-hour drive from Cranbrook, and in Kelowna for recovery, a 6-hour drive from Cranbrook. And whereas there is no public transportation linking Southeast BC with Kamloops or Kelowna, and whereas a parent or guardian is required to accompany their child and remain there at their expense, or their child participates in detox and waits for a recovery bed to become available, resulting in hundreds of dollars in personal expenses for travel, accommodation, and meals. Therefore, be it resolved that the BC government, through the Ministry of Children and Family Development and the Ministry of Health, provide a minimum of 10 publicly funded detox and treatment beds for youth to be located in a center in southeastern British Columbia. So that resolution was passed again almost unanimously at this year's AKBLG. So last year we arranged through UBCM to meet with the Minister of Health and our senior staff, which we did. We brought this forward as a concern at that time. There was a follow-up phone conversation between the minister and the vice president of clinical operations for Interior Health in October, so last October. And in that letter, and I'll just read you part of it. Thank you for the consideration and attention you brought to our 2025 UBCM convention. Your insights and local perspective are invaluable as we continue working to strengthen health services in Cranbrook and support the health and well-being of residents across the BC interior. We covered a number of topics, and there were 3 listed, one of which was the youth detox and recovery programs. I value the relationship Interior Health shares with the City of Cranbrook, as do we all. I look forward to our ongoing collaboration as we continue to advance healthcare, support residents, and look for opportunities to jointly promote advantages of living and working in your community and our region. Sincerely, Diane Shendrook, Vice President of Clinical Operations for Interior Health. So I have 2 requests this evening. One, that the mayor and/or our CAO get in contact with the Vice President of Clinical Operations and ask for an update on where things are at around this initiative and potentially the other 2 that were listed in that letter. And secondly, I'm going to ask Councillor Lynette Ray, who is a director now with the AKBLG, to follow up with AKBLG and see where they're going to go, because they did promise that this year they're going to actually follow up and do something with the resolutions. So those are my 2 requests for this evening. I really do believe that our youth deserve at least that much.
Thank you for that, and that's noted. We'll take care of those 2 items. Councillor Ray? Yeah, great. And I have nothing more to add than it's already been said. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Peabody, Councillor Bassett, all in favor? We're adjourned. Thanks, guys. Good meeting.